Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Founders Code. My guest this morning is data analytics guru who, after leaving a data intelligence company in Collibra, started a data security startup called Raito. And guess what? He sold it back to Collibra just 4 years later. Please welcome Bart Vandekerckhove. Hi, Bart.
Hey, Shamil. Thank you for having me, and congrats on pronouncing my last name correctly.
I've put a lot of effort into making sure I pronounce it correctly. Can we start? Can you tell our listeners and the viewers a little bit about the work that Collibra does and the work that Raito did?
Yeah. So what Collibra does is it basically helps organizations consume their data, right? So either it's by exposing their data to AI agents and large language models, or it's by exposing the data to more traditional ways like reporting, insights, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I try to explain what Collibra does, because that's what data governance does. I try to avoid data governance because then people's eyes glaze over and then I have to go into details what data governance is, and they are even more bored. But that's why I talk about what our customers try to achieve with Collibra, and it's really to get value from data. And a lot goes into that before you really can get value from data. It's often underestimated. But what we see now with AI is that people are starting to understand that, well, actually, in order to get value from data, we have to do data governance. Hence, we need Collibra, which is the best in market.
And regarding Collibra, can we just first, can you explain to people the scope of the company, how big the company is, which markets it operates with?
Yeah,
We'll start with that question.
yeah. So Collibra last time it was valued, it was like multiple billions, right? So it's definitely beyond a unicorn. I mean, well-established market leader in data governance. In terms of employees, we are more than 1,000 people. We operate globally. And in terms of customers, it's typically the large enterprises that need to use data to be productive. But we also see smaller organizations, well, still large, but we see for instance, a player like Zalando, pure data native company, cloud native company. Data is core in their business, right? If you go to their website, it's all about data. It's all highly customized to you. Well, in order to make that work, they need data governance, and they go for a product like Collibra. So large banks, large pharmaceuticals, large governments, but then also very agile, smaller vendors. For each of them, data is at the core of their business.
And in the simplistic terms, when you refer to governance, how would you explain it in a simple terms? What does the governance involve, especially with an enterprise level customer having a lot of data?
Well, I'll start where it used to be and what organizations are pivoting away from. What governance used to be, and it really is in the word, trying to govern, trying to police. That's what it was like 5 to 10 years ago. They had a governance sat in their ivory tower and was policing you in whether you were using data in a compliant way. So it was all regulatory driven. And that's no surprise, because the main push for data governance was initially regulatory driven after a financial crisis. So you had BCBS 239, a regulation for banks to how to properly govern data, right? So if you now listening and you're already starting to fall asleep and your eyes are glazing over, I get it, right? That's where data governance is coming from. It's really from policing, bean counting, trying to get hold of the business, and in that motion, trying to slow down the business. But in the meantime, a lot has changed, right? So when data governance started, data was still largely a byproduct of business. In the meantime, data is core to the business, to a lot of organizations, right? So what data governance is doing, it's shifting from being a police officer to being a enabler. And a lot of people say that, right? We need to be an enabler. We can't police. Security says similar things. And for data governance, that means supporting the business. It means making sure that your data is trustworthy and of high quality. In essence, it means each time somebody needs data, it can be your AI agent, or it can be you need to build a report. What it means is you're putting all the effort in place for that person to find the data, the right data, with the right definitions and of sufficient quality. And you need to make sure that when you're using that data, you're in compliance with regulations, whether it's privacy regulations or security standards. Now, what does finding the right data mean? Because it can sound abstract, right? I just
Yeah.
go to my database and there's a customer table. Well, a customer is a good example. Depending on who you ask in the business, customer is somebody else, right? If you ask sales, and if there are salespeople listening, they will hate me for that. But sales quickly qualifies somebody as a customer because it drives up their quota, right?
Yeah.
For finance, a customer is somebody who has paid the actual invoices. So it's a world of difference in what that is, and it's also reflected in the data. So if you have to build a report and it's for finance on customer performance, you're going to use different tables. So you really need to understand what is the data, who owns it, what's the definition, right? Where in the life cycle of that customer is that customer, because that really impacts performance. If you don't do that and management asks three people for a number, what was revenue this year, all three will come with different numbers. That's not good if you want to really put data as a cornerstone of your business.
Just not long ago, like before we get into Raito, I think not long ago I was reading a post on LinkedIn about a guy who literally uncovered that for the last 3 months the whole company was operating on data which was hallucinated by one of the LLM models, and they were even putting forecasts, having meetings around that. And only like recently he's realized that all of they were doing for them, like just to show like how important having the right data, right, and securing the data is to today's world. And can you tell us then about Raito?
Yeah, so about Raito, right? So the initial idea came into existence when I was still product manager at Collibra in 2017, 2018. I saw that you had the privacy regulations. By the way, I'm a big privacy nerd, big security nerd. And I saw that you had GDPR coming and they had very strict requirements on how to use personal data.
And the
And then I
fines are
saw
huge.
fines are huge. Oh, they're earning a lot of money. People are underestimating the fines, but last time I checked several months ago, they are raking in the fines, right? It's a data tax. But so I was working on privacy and I was talking to privacy teams. And what I noticed was that privacy was also managed in a siloed way. So the legal team were using their tools to collect consent, to have their register of processing activities, their privacy policies, and so forth. And they were there. They were just documents, paper tigers almost. I thought, well, there's a huge distance between privacy policies and how the data is being consumed. In terms of systems, there's a complete disconnect. So I thought, like, hey, we need to find a way where it becomes very easy to immediately dynamically enforce those privacy policies where the data consumption happens. Because now there's this huge translation, it costs a lot of effort. The wrong people have to do it. You don't have visibility, there's no ownership. So it doesn't really happen. Or when it happens, it's too repressive, right? If people manage to enforce it, it really prevents people from accessing the data, consuming it, and being innovative. And that was that balance. Either you're compliant with your privacy and security policies, or you weren't, but then you could use the data. And this was a false dichotomy in my mind. I thought, like, hey, you need to be able to consume data while also being privacy and security compliant, right? And that's where the idea initially came from as a product manager here at Collibra. And so I didn't really get it as a priority at Collibra at the time. Most organizations weren't still there yet, right? Most organizations weren't thinking of operationalizing their privacy policies. So in terms of timing, it wasn't the ideal moment for Collibra, so I couldn't get my engineers. And as a PM, if you don't get your engineers, you get frustrated and you throw tantrums and stuff. And I guess, so it was also COVID. So I was at home. I had a lot of time to think. And I remember vividly, actually, I was thinking how huge this opportunity was. And I was also thinking, well, I've been an employee for 10 years, right? So the past 10 years since graduation, I always worked as an employee. What do I want to do the next 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And with COVID, I thought, like, hey, let's go for it. Let's just start a company. So I immediately gave my resignation at Collibra, right? And started Raito. So at the time, Raito was just me and
Yeah.
my idea, which was very conceptual. I had no understanding of how data warehouses worked. I didn't know what Databricks was. I didn't know what AWS S3 was, Redshift. Zero technical knowledge. And I started selling it, right?
And can you go to the starting? Because at the start, as a founder, too, I know that the initial stages are research, just trying to like, okay, the first thing is to know what you don't know, right? You identify, okay, I have nothing on these kind of concepts and companies. What was your initial kind of experience? Was like, okay, I need to study all of these things, try to put them together. And this is, by the way, before we had like Claude Cowork, where you can just throw things into it and be like, create a good idea. How do these things work? And it kind of explains everything to you. So you had to do all of that like research half manually back in the day. Can you speak a little bit more about how those days used to go by for you?
Oh, they were fun, man. They were a lot of fun. How did I do it? Let's say I was not the brains in the operation. So when I found my co-founder, I found the brains in the operation. I found a very, very brilliant CTO co-founder. My approach is just try and sell because I knew the problem was there. I knew that. That was validated at Collibra. Well, no, it wasn't validated at Collibra. I knew that it was gonna come. So I believed firmly in the problem. I knew data consumption was gonna increase, right? We're gonna use more and more data. But I also knew that the importance of privacy and security was going to become more important. So at the time, people were using Excel files and people called me crazy. They said, we just do it with Excel. But I was convinced that with consumption of data becoming so important, privacy and security will also become more important. So I didn't doubt the problem, right? How to validate the solution, that honestly, I was shooting blanks. I just went and tried to sell it. I went everywhere and started making noise. So I would engage in fora, I would talk to people, I would write, I would try to sell it, I would try to find partners. I was just talking to people, talking to people. And in these first conversations, I mean, I should have taken some screenshots where people were like, in the most polite way, correcting me because I would say the dumbest things and they would correct me and I would learn from it. So that's my approach is really just go and sell it, try to sell it and learn and adapt and improve. And in the meantime, of course, work on that technical knowledge, right? In the meantime, I know how Snowflake works. I know how Databricks works. So I know how the systems work. I know how the architecture is set up. I didn't know that, but that shouldn't prevent you from starting. You can learn that stuff. You just need yourself, you need to buy the time to learn. And so if I would have to summarize it, it's make sure that time is an ally because you need time to learn and improve. That's basically it.
Yeah. And how long till you found a CTO and you've made a decision that you're gonna do it together?
It took me almost a year. So imagine I'm selling this stuff or I'm trying to sell this stuff for more than a year without a CTO. So the objection that always came back, I was even trying to raise funding without a CTO. Objection was always, where's your CTO? Who's going to build this? But from the start, I knew it had to be so Dieter. So that was the former CTO, now our engineering manager on data access. I knew it had to be Dieter, right? Because of what he did at Collibra, he basically built like the modern version of Collibra. This guy can build, right? It's a machine. The engineers beneath him operate like crazy. So I knew one guy, this is to be the guy. But it took me a long time to convince him. And in the meantime, I was trying out with other people. But yeah, it needs to be a match, right? And so I couldn't find an exact match.
What are the qualities that you were looking for? And what were the red flags in terms of like other matches that didn't come through?
The drive just to do it, basically. Yeah.
Because during interviews, you can find everybody is like, yeah, I'm ready to work 24/7. Yeah, this is a cool topic. But then when
you start working,
like,
you start
exactly.
working. So it's basically, it's different gradations of how involved are they, right? So some are just talking, let's do something, it stops. Well, naturally, they follow the funnel. Other people, you start playing around with the project. I was talking to somebody who was like the CTO profile. but he got a very nice position. So he went for that position, right? So up,
Yeah.
that didn't work out.
Security.
Other people are in the job security. And you have to understand, for a lot of technical people, definitely the CTO profile, they can easily have job security with a very nice salary, right? So find that person that is a very good CTO who will often have the job security, willing to do this in a country like Belgium is very, very hard, right? And now there are a lot of young entrepreneurs that are doing this, and I love that. But when you look at people of my generation, in the meantime, I'm not the youngest anymore, you see that among us, we're a bit more conservative in making that jump.
Hmm. Yeah, we appreciate the stability, especially after surviving COVID and AI age. I guess people are more leaning towards, especially financial crisis. I think all of those kind of steps kind of teach people to be more risk averse, to be more careful. I think that,
Crisis after crisis after crisis.
yeah.
Yep. I mean, I look at it a different way. For me, crisis is volatility and hence opens up opportunity. But I also understand that you're a bit more careful with all those crises.
Hmm.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And, to kind of understand your psychological portrait, can you talk us a bit about where'd you come from? Like, what were you like growing up? Did you
Oh,
show
wow.
any like kind of signs for like, oh yeah, risks? Love it. Let's go. Let's do some
No,
entrepreneurship.
opposite, opposite. I was a daydreamer. I
Hmm.
know I spent a lot of time outside climbing trees and stuff, but most of the time I was just in my mind, fantasizing. That's what I did as a kid. So as a kid, I wanted to always go into the arts.
Yeah.
I wanted to first be a graphic designer. Then I wanted to be a movie maker. So I was always, until in my 20s, I had my little band, my rock band. I wanted to be a musician. So I always wanted to be more in the field where you connect with people through
Yeah.
arts, where you share emotions. That's what really interested me. Of course, my mother, who did most of the upbringing and the raising, she, bless her heart, she had so many stressful moments.
Hmm.
She was always like pushing me towards more common sense and pushing towards getting a solid degree first, which I did in business, and then you could
Hmm.
always venture. But I do feel that I think I would have made a crappy artist. So in that sense, my mother was definitely right. But a lot of the creativity or entrepreneurship really requires a lot of creativity, and that brings me back to my your previous question, like on your CTO, like who do you work with? I think you need stellar opposites, right? So where I
Hmm.
was more about connecting with people, trying to sell it, trying to market it, trying to find the right colors and messages and words to, in a short amount of space as possible, to bring you the vibe and the values that we stand for. Um, my co-founder, he was about, how do I build this? And they had to be way
Hmm.
more practical. So if you're both dreamers, yeah, it doesn't work. If you're both, how do we get shit done and make this in practice? It also doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when looking for a co-founder, I think you need to find a person that is the stellar opposite of you, but shares the values. So Dieter and myself, although we're in almost every way an opposite, we do share the same values. And I
Yeah.
think so values like honesty are very important. When it became very difficult, we've had difficult times, like all startups. You go to
Yeah.
times where you're just grinding your teeth
Like,
from the
why the hell
pressure.
am I doing this?
Yeah, yeah. That's a moment you're exhausted, you're
Hmm.
emotional, you can get into conflict with your co-founder. But even in these very, very difficult times where we were close to opposites, we still went for communication. So
Hmm.
because we had those shared values, we could still communicate in those very, very difficult times. And I think that eventually was foundational to, I would say, the success of Raito, right? Because we did eventually nice exit.
Can you talk about those foundational values? You're talking about like honesty is one of them. Now, being
Yep.
able to come with a hard, like tough dialogues to
Yep.
have with your co-founder. Maybe there are some others you can like pinpoint that have helped you survive basically your relate for your relationship, co-founding relationship to survive those tough times?
I think honesty was the most important one. We had some other values where we talked about openness and directness and being kind. I would say that one as well. So openness, being honest, but also being kind and respectful, right? So
What is being
when you,
kind for you?
yeah, so when being open,
Hmm.
everybody's flawed, right? Everybody has a down the day that they're down, tired, they're not thinking straight, and you might try to say your opinion, but instead of saying your observation, you say your interpretation of the observation, and you attack that person there as a person, right? And there you have to be careful that you have to think about being kind, where you you think about what you're communicating as well. So how does it affect that person that's being kind? And this is not wishy-washy, tree-hugging hippie stuff, right? I think it's important to be kind in that you pause and reflect before you say something. Even when you're being open and transparent, you need to pause and think, how will that affect that person? Why? Well, of course, you don't want to hurt people just for the sake of hurting it, but it also requires you to think about, what am I saying? Do I stand behind that? Is it an objective observation, or is it my interpretation, or I'm just being an asshole?
Hmm.
And this requires you to really think about it, and that allows you to go to the core of the problem, right? Just saying random
Yeah.
shit like, this is, you are to blame. Well, okay, what does it solve? Okay, great, you vented, you're lighter. The other person is pissed off, but most of all, you haven't touched the essence or the core of the problem.
Hmm.
So that's why open, right? Communicate, think what you say. And at the company, everybody was saying what they're thinking, right? There was like, you could just say it, but then be kind, do it in a way that you talk really about the topic and the object, and don't attack somebody on that person.
Mm. Did you have a difference between being kind and being nice? Because I think what a lot of founders struggle with, they try to be seen as good, by everybody in a company. They want to feel like everybody likes them. They want to be good. And instead of being kind, they sometimes start being nice to everybody. When
Yeah.
in reality, the kind decision would be to tell the hard truth for the person other than just being, nice and smiling.
I don't give a fuck. I don't give a
Love it.
fuck.
Love
I don't
it.
give a
We
fuck.
just put it on a wall.
No,
Just be
uh,
brutally honest.
uh, sometimes I'm careful in what I say,
Hmm.
right? But I will say it nevertheless. And with some people, I know I have to repeat it a couple of times, and I have to shape it in such a way that they're not pissed off. Look, if you say stuff and pisses people off, they're not going to listen. So sometimes you have to say, but you have to say it a couple of times. You have to say it nicely, gently, but you got to repeat it. But you still can be honest.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't care about being nice. I don't care people liking me. What I care about is, am I being a kind person, right? That's what I care about. And sometimes the truth is the nicest thing to say, right? I mean, I wasn't trying to be nice. I had to let go of people. I had to let go of several people because there was not a fit. And you got to bring that conversation. And before that, you have to bring it up a couple of times to see whether you can find a solution. Can we find a way that there is a fit, that you bring value? But for that, you need to be honest, right? So yeah.
And, it doesn't come easy to all of the people. And something has to happen in life to kind of teach that lesson for people to change and be more, focused on the reality. Did you have any experiences that kind of helped you find out that this is the correct way to run a
Oh yeah,
business, to build a company? What were those moments?
yeah, yeah. A good company, like a Collibra, a good company that has emotion,
Hmm.
they iron out the kinks in your personality. So a good company makes sure that their employees can use their strengths to excel, and make sure that their weaknesses, whatever,
Hmm.
are ironed out through process and structure, right?
Yeah.
So as an employee, before starting Raito, I was completely oblivious to my weaknesses, right? I thought I was this brilliant hotshot. When I was pissed off, I would directly attack you. because I thought that's what you do, right? So when there's a problem, you go straight on. And of course, that was not productive, but the organization just wrote out the inefficiencies from my character. So as such, I was never directly exposed to my flaws. I really thought that being directly head-on, aggressive headbutt, I thought that was productive. No, it was the organization that was productively working around me. So when I started Raito, right, I thought like, hey, this is the way to go. I went in, I headbutted. I remember one meeting where I just threw chairs, right? I was so pissed off, I threw chairs.
During the
And
meeting.
after the meeting, when
No.
people left, I was so pissed off because I didn't get what I wanted, right? So I threw chairs. And uh, it's not productive. It's just not productive. So at a startup, the great thing about a startup is you are immediately confronted with who you are. So your strengths, your weaknesses, you see them immediate. If immediate feedback, if you fuck something up, it blows in your face the same day. If not the same day, it's within the week. So you really get to know yourself, and you really have to think about this yourself. How are you in the world? How do you work with other people? You have to think about how other people operate. So you really greatly improve your self awareness and
Mhm.
also people skills. So that's something I really developed at Raito.
Mm. And before joining Writer, you've worked at a couple of like very structured organizations like BNP Paribas,
Mm.
Deloitte. Can you talk about like how has that experience shaped the way you kind of see the structure, the company, other people? Did it help you become a better kind of founder where you have to merge all of the different positions and make all of these different decisions? Because we see founders just the first career they jumped into a startup and they have no experience working with other larger companies, seeing structures, motivational structures, operations. What were the benefits of having gone through all of those structure places?
Yeah, I think it's just relative experience. So I wouldn't say that working at a corporate is going to get you ready for a startup. Like, no way.
Mm.
What it does help you do is understand how your buyer works and how they operate, right? So you lose some of the naivete, right? Your buyers are not startups typically, right? They go to buying process, they're slower. They work with political games. Your buyer has political capital. So having that experience and being somewhat older helps you understand the world better that you're trying to sell to. As it in helping you shape being a startup employee? Not really. Though
Okay.
I must say that the experience at Deloitte, so I worked 4 years at Deloitte, was very good because there you just learn to shut up and do the work. But it's something you also learn at a startup, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Can you talk a bit about the political capital? Because I think, like, so very few people that I speak to actually understand that within their buyers, there are politics being played at large companies. It's not just, it's a different scale. And when you have like thousands of people working for you, there is a lot of politics going on within. Can you
yeah,
speak about that kind of understanding? Maybe it's going to be helpful for a lot of viewers and listeners when they
yeah,
approach their like business development game too.
yeah. I'm myself very bad at politics, so I always lose in the political game. But in organizations, you have to step away from the idea that the most productive person is the person that goes up in the organization, right? That's not the case. So even if you bring the most value or the smartest, you're the most productive employee, doesn't mean you move up. The person that moves up is the person that is very well at playing politics, even if those politics go against the value of the organization.
And what is involved in playing politics at those company levels?
Like I said, I'm very bad at politics, but it's very hard to understand what they're doing, but it largely means positioning yourself very well. So making sure that you really are perceived by the persons above you as a very valuable player without being threatening to them. So that's a balance. Politicians know how to play. They have a strong network in the organizations of allies, and I also think they not always openly speak their minds, right? So you know how I talked about my values of the startup. I think the political player in a large organization is in almost every way the opposite of the values of a startup. So if you are an employee in a startup, right, and you try to understand how your buyer thinks, and A successful buyer thinks it's the opposite of you almost. Uh, I'm being borderline cynical and negative here, but like use this rule of thumb. If you talk to, what you often see is in organizations, if you engage with a buyer and he's nice and you really connect, these are not always the people that are going to bring you in. Some sales cycles can take 6 months to a year. That's a very long sales cycle. And it's your champion that has to bring that solution. While they're playing Game of Thrones in their organization, people are getting stabbed
Well
in the
said.
back. They have to bring you in, right? So you are part of a political play. And that requires political capital. Because if they bring you in and the project is a complete dud, yeah, it costs them political capital. They're going to lose in the Game of Chairs, in the Game of Thrones. So that is the concept you have to take into account, right? Like how much risk does it cost for your champion to bring you in? One, and two, most importantly, that person, do they have that sway in the organization? Do they have the political capital to bring you in the first place? And that's always going to be the person that you vibe with or connect with most.
Mhm.
Although in a, like some of our first customers, we do found them. So we found some people that had the capital to drive the change, to bring us in. They had the capital to drive the change, and they weren't assholes. If you can find these, awesome. They are great to work with. So these visionaries that have the political sway, that can bring you in, that can drive the change, but they are rare. They are very, very, very rare. If you find these, awesome. You're good to go.
And would you suggest people look at people who within the companies are just starting their journey, something new, who needs a lot of support from like outside kind of companies and potential partners, or somebody who's already embedded for like a few years within the company?
The person that drives a change, that you will successfully bring you in.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's a person, either they've been there for a while, they know how everything works, who to talk to, right?
Hmm.
How to bring you in. So they need to have some awareness of the company, or it has to be some kind of rising star that comes, that is really hired to bring in change, has budget, has basically free play to drive change. If you can attach to that person, great. But you
Nice.
have to test it. You have to test it. And how do you test it, right? So we had long sales cycles, so 6 to 12 months, data security, a lot of change, big impact, deep in infrastructure. So a long sales cycle. How do you test it? Well, so you're a founder, you have your call with your buyer, your champion, they're vibing, there's this great connection. Second call, it's still the same guy. Third call, still the same guy. So this is going nowhere. This is a person with too much time on their hands, and we've talked to plenty of them, bored, right? They're going to waste your time. So you need to qualify as soon as possible. So you can ask questions. Is there a project? Is there budget? Who's in charge of that, right?
Hmm.
If they know that, great. They know what's happening. But more importantly, can they bring people around the table? Can they bring the CISO? Can they bring, in my case, a data architect or a head of data platform, head of data governance? So can they bring in people weight on your call? If not,
Hmm.
cut it.
Yeah. I know that seeing somebody from legal show up on one of those calls is not usually a very good sign or very easy, because I know that like compliance and everything kills a lot of the deals, I guess, at the scale. And do you remember for Raito, like when you were getting like some of the first clients, and you were like, "Oh, this shit's gonna work." Like we're actually moving. Do you remember like the first moments where after a lot of like struggles and trying to get through those cycles, you were like, "I think this has a good chance to start working now."
So when you start and you close your first deals, that's like a drug, man. That's a
Hmm.
drug. So convincing somebody to pay you money
Yeah.
for your products, that's a drug. So yeah, I definitely celebrate that. I remember one time we had an inbound lead that found us, and we closed him in a couple of months. So for that, that meant we had not only had a product, but we also had a good website that
Hmm.
drove people found. They went to the sales cycle, and we closed him in a couple of months. I mean, I remember that is a rush that you're going to keep chasing for the rest of your life. I think it's an amazing feeling.
And can you tell us about, like, as a startup, what was your experience like raising money? And is there like anything is like to know when to raise? What kind of things do you need to have in place to do a good raise, not waste your time? Or
I So I only did it once, right? So I can only
Mhm.
talk from my experience.
Yeah.
But we raced at the peak, right? So this was, I think, discussion started end of 2021. So we raced at the peak of, a lot of money was in the market. I think if you have to raise now, I don't think we would raise now, right?
Hmm.
Why was that? It was just two guys and a vague ID, basically, at the time, right?
Two
We had
guys in a
good
garage.
background. Yeah. So we had our pedigree, right?
Hmm.
That was definitely a challenge. So at the time, it was easier to raise than now. Um, if I would do it now again, I would have more proof that it works. Why is that? Gathering that proof that it works is also for yourself important. It's a navigation. When we raised, we had some sense, right? So eventually it worked, right? But as soon as we raised, we had to start hiring, and then you got to keep these people busy, these engineers. So there need to be requirements. It becomes
Hmm.
very practical. So the room to navigate and completely pivot was greatly reduced. Raising capital is opposite to what people say. Raising capital is really to accelerate, and you need to have a clear trajectory to accelerate on. Of course, you can still learn along the way, but if you were like us, still like figuring out what is the basic idea of the solution we're building, who is the buyer, what is the exact problem, what is their political problem in the organization that we're solving, that we didn't know. And we raised some money. We already had to do a small pivot in terms of priorities of product. We completely changed the priorities. We threw it upside down, but you can't do many of these big pivots when you're raising, or when it was clear at the time that you raised that you were going to do such a pivot. So that's what I'm saying. When you're really raising, know or try to know as much as possible what you're going to spend the money on and which direction you're taking. Or now, I would just say thank you for the money. Come back in a couple of months' time.
And growing up to, as a person, as a founder, as a like leader, usually it's very hard to do on your own, and like going through all of the paths. Some of us kind of need, let's call them mentors, or just somebody we look up to, somebody who gives us advice, somebody who cuts through the bullshit with us and just tells us like, dude, like, check this out, like this about yourself, like try to fix this, and who give us to us straight. Who were the people that kind of like made you, one, believe in yourself, to drive that self-confidence, and second, told you without any bullshit, it's like straight to your face, like that's what you need to do to get better, to improve, to like what were those people and what kind of role have they played in shaping the Bart we know?
Yeah, great question. I really believe in the importance of mentors. I really, really believe in it. In fact, like one of my mentors, I will also say our mentors for Raito in general, was Stan Christians. So he was one of the co-founders of Collibra.
Mhm.
He lives here in Brussels, and he's trying to really build out the entrepreneurship here. So he's really on a mission to help
I think Stan is
entrepreneurs.
coming to the podcast in a couple of weeks to
Look at that.
probably get a story too.
Hope it's good. So definitely Stan, and I was lucky enough to really get his mentorship. And one of the things he always said is like, you need a good corporate structure, you need a good board of directors, and it's exactly that. You'll have people telling you how it is. You have people that will help you in terms of founder conflict. You have people that help you with experience. So I didn't have I didn't have yet that really board of directors with that structure. But I did have a couple of mentors. So Stan was there giving me a lot of advice, listening. So that was very, very important. Super grateful for that. Then one of my mentors, also a coach, was Benny. So Benny was the guy that brought Collibra from 0 to 100 million ARR. So he was the head of sales that brought
Mhm.
them there, right? So Benny was also a mentor helping me figure out how to sell this. But he went a bit higher. He was like, mentoring me as a startup CEO. So it was not just about sales, it was the broader picture, and I could talk to him. And sometimes we had sessions where he just listened, didn't say a thing. Next session, he came back. And even just the talking helped, but then he listened and then gave me feedback. So very target feedback.
What were some of the main lessons that they were coming back to you with?
Yeah. So primarily at the time, it was about working with my investors, my VCs, focusing on the sales cycle. Who's the buyer? What problems are they having? And what product do you need to build to help them out? So with Benny, the pointers were mainly on how do you sell this today, in the future, right? Who's your buyer? And then what product are you going to build? And don't forget the product. It's all about the product. So although he was initially just helping me out with sales, he really brought that broader picture. Like, don't forget product. Product is the main driver for your sales. And then I had a third mentor, very, very unlikely mentor, but that was my lawyer. So I had my lawyer here in Brussels, Luc Wijnand. So he was officially my lawyer. But I think Luc also, in very, very difficult times where I would really call Luc in the weekend for legal advice, he would not only give me legal advice, he would also give me just counseling, right? Because he's a well-established lawyer with a big office that mainly works with startups and scale-ups. So he really knows that journey of a startup founder, somebody working on a scale-up. He has a broad network, a lot of experience and insights. So he would give me advice beyond just the legal, right? And that was extremely, extremely helpful in very difficult times where I could fall back on Luc that would give me sane advice, right? Not just what's legal, but what to do as a CEO and how to move best forward. So with these three mentors, I would say they were extremely, extremely important in the success of Raito and just in my mental well-being.
Yeah. A lot of people I'll talk to, I do tell them also, like, it's important to have mentors around you who, because people are willing to give, to share, to help. The world is not cruel. We're all humans. We've all been through different stages. We want to help others grow too. But most people ask me, like, where do you find them? Like, how do I identify, like, who I need to, like, to get as a mentor? Like, how do I identify the direction in which, like, to look for the mentor? What could you tell to people like that?
I think I was fortunate. I think everything happened through my network. So all the connections were made through network, and that helps. So if it comes through network, you can trust it more, right? I imagine just a simple example. My lawyer was recommended to Stan because he used to work with Luc. That's pure network. If I had to find my lawyer on Google, it wouldn't have been the same story.
Yeah. And, after 4 years building Raito, you do a sale back to Collibra. Can you tell us, like, how did that happen? Did you, like, build Raito at the start thinking, like, what is our exit strategy? Like, what do we need to build and integrate with the current capabilities, for example, at Collibra, to be able for this to be attractive and easy for them to kind of absorb in the future? Or did it just happen kind of like naturally?
Oh, I was really thinking of making a big company, right? So I was really striving for the future. I was thinking about managing privacy and security for in-body devices. That was how far I was thinking in the future. So I was really already thinking going sci-fi with a long-term vision. But of course, the initial idea was shaped. At the time, I was at Collibra. So,
Yeah.
of course, the experiences at Collibra kind of shaped my thinking. And I was at a party with Stan where I said, "Hey, Stan, I'm leaving Collibra. I'm going to start my own thing." And Stan said, "Well, be careful because your opinions and your views are shaped with what you've seen at Collibra, right? It largely determines what you're seeing. And it's also the product you're building, and it's also the market you can tap into. And data governance is not as big of a market as I would say other products. So he kind of warned me like, hey, watch out. The way you look at the world is very much shaped by what you experience at Collibra. And so although I had my long-term vision, I'm back at Collibra. So Stan was right in a way. But I was not building a product to get acquired, right? I
Hmm.
was building a product to really build my own company, something I really wanted, and I guess
Hmm.
still want to do. But when I was building it, that was plan A. I
Yeah.
always worked on my plan B, right?
Hmm.
So plan A was aim for the stars, go for it. Plan B was if you don't get there, make sure you land on the moon, and that was
Yeah.
an acquisition. So throughout that time period, I kept in touch with Collibra, with the product managers. Uh, Also kept in touch with some of our direct competitors. So we were friends with our competitors to see, and we had some throughout the time. We even had discussions with competitors around acquiring us. You just keep working on those options, but it doesn't mean you have to go for it. But you kind of keep them alive
Yeah.
in case that plan A doesn't work. You can fall back on uh, on plan B. And then gradually we saw that the need for what we built with Raito at Collibra was reaching a point where it was so important for Collibra as a priority that the acquisition almost came directly or immediately from that work.
And you talk a lot about networks of people, you were lucky to have people in your network. How do you build those networks, like in terms of like building relationship, investing in relationship, picking the right relationships to invest in, making sure that, each part of your relationship has at least like once a year update and like, hey, how are you? Kind of things. How do you approach building networks?
You got to tell me, Shamil, I'm very bad at networking. I'm very, very, very bad at networking. Like it's something I'm trying to, like I said earlier, as a kid,
Hmm.
I was living in my head, and that's where I like to be. I love talking to myself. These are the best conversations. I always agree. I'm very much of an introvert. So
Mm.
networking for me is something I haven't figured out quite yet.
We're
Uh,
doing quite well here on the podcast, by the way. Great job.
yeah. uh, so I just hang out with people I like, that I
Hmm.
admire, that are interesting. And if something comes out of it, who cares, right?
Hmm.
The people I stay in touch with are the people that mean something to me, that I like. And I honestly don't expect immediately something from it. And if I can help them out, even that's how I approach it. I don't see it as something transactional. Maybe I should, but people I find interesting, I like. If I can help you out, even better. Awesome. That's how I approach it, and we'll see if it's the right way. I don't know.
Hmm. I have some of my friends who are basically like their vision is, if I cannot help you succeed more in terms of like business value or anything, then I'm not a good friend to you. Like then we shouldn't be like kind of like shouldn't be. So they're focusing friendships and relationships a lot around like adding value in terms of like monetary, financial, business value to each other. While others are like friends and work are completely separate. Like friends is somewhere where you go and you chill, you have a steak, and you don't talk about work. How would you like, as a kind of person who's deep in the industry, person who does a lot of kind of like high high politic level kind of stuff, how do you juggle between keeping your personal kind of and work life in terms of relationships together?
I think there's a spillover.
Mm.
There's a spillover 100%. If you're serious about entrepreneurship, there's always going to be, with a lot of your friends, are going to be a business side around
Mm.
it, but you also need to be able to separate it, right? So it can't be that your friends are, it's always about business. That would be boring, I guess.
Mhm.
But there's always going to be a spillover, right? So a word of advice that my mother gave when I started Raito, she says like you got to give your wife a percentage of the company, because
Mm.
if you want her to support you, help you out with the family while you're doing this business, there needs to be some kind of monetary incentive as well for her, right?
Oh,
So
interesting. So did
you're on
you?
a journey. I did not,
Mhm.
and I will do it next time. Because I mean, there were periods where I was so stressed, I was so unpleasant to be around at home, right?
Mhm.
So your wife has to counterbalance that. You got kids that are highly in tune with your emotion, right? So when you're stressed,
Mhm.
they're stressed, and then everything just breaks down in the house. So in that sense, next venture I do, I will give my wife percentage of the venture I'm on, just because, yeah, she deserves it. And I would also see, I would never separate them. I
Mhm.
would also always see them as, you need to find this healthy balance between
Yeah.
what you're doing business wise and what you're doing in your personal life. There needs to be a nice balance in between, and that means there will be spillovers.
And you've mentioned like there are moments where there is a lot of stress. Let's say most of the time it's a situation where there's shit ton of stress. Do you operate well under stress, or do you have some kind of methods to kind of reduce the level of cortisol to kind of function better without having too much anxiety, in your system? Like what works best for you?
Like go club seals or drown.
Yeah. Well, maybe not to that extent.
uh, I like to operate in the unknown. Like I'm perfectly comfortable not knowing.
With uncertainty.
Yeah. Fuck it, you never know. All you can do is just try and make sure you live another day, and that means living the other day. If you exhaust yourself from rushing and stressing, yeah, you're not there the next day, right? And like I said earlier, like you have to make sure that time is an ally,
Yeah.
and I always work towards that, right? So you're in the uncertain. You don't have all the answers. Just go, use the information you have, take a jump, move forward, learn, and adjust, right? That's it. And that's how I dealt with stress. I'm perfectly happy not knowing. I'm perfectly happy making mistakes and then just adjusting afterwards. So it's just a learning process. And if you look at how they describe fundraisers, right? Fundraisers, each time you get money, and the money is just really to learn, right? You
Yeah.
had your initial product market fit. You've proven there are buyers for your product. You raise capital. Well, why is that capital? To learn if you can build out a repeatable sales process. And then you go to, I guess, Series B. You raise capital again. Why is it? Can I build out that repeatable sales process in other
Yeah.
regions, other markets? So that's what's all about. It's really about making time your ally and accept that you are a person with flaws that makes mistakes, and most of all accepting that the people around you also make mistakes, but everybody's there making decisions with their best judgment and also with their heart in the game. So this is kind of also how I operated at Raito. I gave high degrees of independence to the people working with. So I really put a lot of confidence in the decisions they made, right? So, but then we would regularly reevaluate those decisions and we would adjust where needed. That's it.
And with high performance friends of mine who I talk to a lot, with those who operate well in uncertainty, I notice two things which generally connect all of them. Like one, they have, like some of them have nothing to lose. Like literally, like they are at a like bottom level. Doesn't matter. Like if everything fails, I don't lose anything. So they're just out there. Uncertainty, doesn't care. And there is the second version who who are more spiritual, not religious, but spiritual, and they believe that they're unbeatable. Like I know things will work out. I have no clue what's out there. I know I'm gonna go, and shit's gonna go my way.
Yeah.
Do you have any like either first or the second? Is like what are those like secret ways in which you view the world and the universe that kind of helps you stay confident within those environments?
Great question, man. Definitely not the first one. I had a house, a mortgage, a wife, and two kids,
Yeah.
young kids that grow and that you need to feed and you need to buy a lot of clothes. So I had a lot to lose. But indeed, I would guess more the spiritual way. Like I knew it was going to end well. I just knew it. I really believe that this is something I said to on an offsite a while back. You know that when there's this phenomena of a motorcycle, have you seen these videos where there's a motorcycle driver and they drive in a cliff? So they're driving in the mountains and they drive off a cliff. That is because they're so focused on the cliff that they don't want to drive over it, but they're so focused on it, they're looking at it, and then you drive in that direction. And that's what I believe in. I believe in really you go where you're looking. So if you're always looking at what's going to go bad, that's where you're going to end up. And I also believe that outcomes in front of you, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, are never binary. It's not one or the other. It's a distribution of outcomes, right? And you're somewhere going to end out in the middle of that distribution, the most likely outcome, right? But that most likely outcome is going to be very much depend also on where you look. So in the outcome of possible distributions, if you constantly focus on the bad outcomes, that's the outcome you're going to get. Whereas if you focus on the good outcomes, might not be exactly the same outcome
Yeah.
you want, but you're going to implement all the steps necessary to get there. And implementing those steps takes time, takes energy, takes somebody who's level headed. And you just have to do it every day. Just put in the work, be
And
cool.
what is your process? Because like thinking about bad stuff is easy. Like our minds are survival mode, like from old days. Like we think about how do we survive? What are the things that could go wrong? How do we make sure that we're okay? Uh, do you kind of have to like implement some sort of practices within yourself? Like if you're worrying too much, you just do this, or maybe every morning I wake up, I do this.
Yeah,
Do you have some sort of like practices to put yourself
yeah,
in that like positive, to visualize the goal
yeah.
and to keep that in perspective without getting distracted?
Yeah, the answer is I don't know, but maybe I don't know because I already implemented
Hmm.
the frameworks to get there, right? I think so. Having a family keeps you grounded, right?
Hmm.
You have to. I mean, I had to be home to cook and feed my kids, so
Yeah.
you have to stop thinking about work for a moment. So that's one thing, keeps you grounded. It keeps you from spending too much time on work. Helps you reframe things. That's one thing. Another thing is eating healthy. So
Hmm.
I remember at Raito, I would almost cut back drinking to nothing. So I didn't consume alcohol or very, very little. I would eat healthy, and then I would exercise. So one of the things was every day I was in the office, but
Hmm.
it's a bicycle ride. So every day I was outside, I was cycling, and at night I would come back. So I think because of a lot of these building blocks in my life that focused to me to be healthy, to be disciplined, to kind of think of other things, it immediately helped me also just to have a good sense on the risk, on the uncertainties, and not be too much bothered about the downsides. Now, also bear in mind, it's also weakness I have, right? I tend to be a bit sloppy with details. I tend to be over optimistic, right? And that's where my co-founder helped. Like he would see where things could go wrong because again, he needs to build that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we had a good, healthy balance. If you would have had combined two of me with our visions and our optimism, nothing would have been built and we would have gotten nowhere. So
Hmm.
it's also the combination with your co-founder that helps you.
Hmm. And as last question, I want to ask you, in the world right now with AI, with everything, we've seen that a lot of people are either losing their jobs, after 10, 20 years in the industry, but, they have all this great experience. They know how these companies function. And a lot of them are thinking about, like, maybe I should join a startup. Maybe I should start a company too. What kind of key, like, three pieces of advice would you give to them if they want to take the path of actually starting a company of their own after having a lot of experience exactly
Yeah,
in like a high, like large company?
yeah, yeah. Hmm. So the person you're describing is a person with 20 years of experience in the industry that lost his job, right?
Yeah.
Basically, for whatever excuse, because
Yeah.
companies laying off for AI is a lame ass excuse, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've never been laid off, so I would think getting laid off emotionally scars you, right? So first of
Mhm.
all, would be process it, right? Don't take it too much at heart, right? So don't beat yourself down over it. I think getting laid off is in no way a statement of your value. That's one. So pick yourself up, gather your bearings, and then two. I'm sure there's an idea. I mean, yeah, if you've worked 20 years in the business, you know all the opportunities. Like there's so many opportunities. There's so many processes that don't work where you can just come in with a simple solution. So I would say think about your experiences, see where you see the opportunity in the market. I'm sure there are, and start sell it. I would not say start build it, or I would say start sell it. And that is probably for a lot of people the hardest part is go
Mhm.
start and sell it. Go out there, make yourself a fool, write that post that is ridiculous, get rejected, but meet people, talk to them, learn, improve. But of course, it also depends also on your financial situation. So it's hard to give a generic feedback, but if you have a good financial situation, right, you don't have to worry about money, then I would say, nice, fuck yeah, let's go. Awesome opportunity, man or woman.
And what are you personally most excited about for the next 5 years?
I have mixed feelings. I think we're at the dawn of a rupture in the
Mhm.
social contracts and the economic and political agreements. A lot of people have been fucked over that are angry now, rightly. So I think we're going to go to like seismic changes in social life and political life and so forth. As you see it around, a lot of
Mhm.
people are dying. More will die, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a time of immense opportunity. And I think if you're fortunate enough where you have enough money to feed you and your family and you have a roof over your head, I think there's so much opportunity ahead. Like I said earlier, right? Outcomes is a distribution, and the distribution is very wide. There's a lot
Mhm.
of potential outcomes, both bad and good. So what I'm doing is I'm hedging the bad. So I'm taking measures in my life where if the worst happens, my family and myself remain in relative safety,
Mhm.
but then also look for ways to enjoy the benefit from the uncertainty, the variance
Mhm.
that's coming. And you mentioned AI. Really, AI is going to change the world in the coming 10 years. And you want to know why or how? You don't. But you want proof that it will change the world? Well, look at the dot-com crisis we had, right? Where internet had a shit ton of funding, was
Mhm.
extremely overvalued. We hear same voices about AI now.
Yeah.
Surely we are, but we're not even at the same size of the dot-com bubble. It's gonna
Mhm.
burst. There's a correction gonna happen. But look at where we are now. We
Mhm.
have cloud-native, data-driven companies that don't have brick and mortar stones. This was unthinkable in the 90s. In
Mhm.
10 years' time, we're gonna have companies that are AI first. I don't know how to imagine with that. So I would also say, like, try to position in your way where you can find a place in that brave new world.
Mhm. Thank you. And on this note, I can say that that was a fantastic session. I think a lot of people will find a lot of value out of your optimism, of confidence, of being able to, interact with other people out there, look for mentors, challenge your weaknesses, be honest. Yeah, thank you so much for coming to the show. And I guess from all of the listeners too who are gonna listen in, thank you for showing up authentically and letting us see the real Bart out here.
Thanks, Emil. It's great being here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.